Peace, everybody. Um, we are on our way back to the Convo area after attending the Common Bound conference organized by the New Economy Coalition. And as I'm sitting in the Greyhound station, the thought occurs to me of sharing a post about um, additional reflection from the Common Bound experience, um, and particularly focusing on the idea of new conversation, changing the conversation, changing the context and the foundation of the conversation. And as I'm considering that thought, I see a friend walking in the Greyhound station, Jason, who also attends the Common Bound, who's also from the Cuyahoga area, but is currently based in the Minnesota region, Minneapolis, St. Paul, doing community building in that location. So, um, if you just want to like share some thoughts about the Common Bound and like continue where we were talking about in terms of what our reflections are, what our thoughts are from that experience, and where we go from this point with that experience.
Totally. Yeah. Well, we were just having a great conversation about coming from a spiritual understanding of the divine sovereignty being in each person, and I was struck that Peter was saying that it can be scary to see that, to walk around the world and notice, wow, everyone has complete sovereignty, and that I do too. And talking about addressing people with Your Majesty.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated receiving an email with that, because it was sort of a contradiction to all the beliefs that I have that are not truth.
Yeah.
It immediately awakened me to, oh wow, yeah, this is the reality that I believe.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's difficult to like recognize that within ourselves. As we were talking about before, throughout human civilization and through today, that notion of authority, of legitimacy and validity is so frequently beaten out of us, or discouraged out of us, or even like rationalized out of us, that we're often intimidated, fearful of recognizing that, and other than just in an egotistical, imperialistic, domineering manner, but just in a valid, cosmic, esoteric, intrinsic, ultimate legitimacy of existence, and establishing ourselves in our value and our worth accordingly. So that's where I come from in terms of addressing people with majesty. I mentioned to you before that a lot of people have difficulty being told that. A lot of people don't believe it and think I'm being disrespectful or condescending. But a lot of people just are uncomfortable with that thought of being referred to in such a position of authority. And it's interesting because after the I attend the look at all these little buffaloes out here. I attend the workshop on reparations, and I'm in the workshop, and it's a participatory workshop where people break out into groups and brainstorm about problems, about solutions, and things like that. I kind of resist a little bit. Actually, a considerable amount. I'm there. I'm in the conversation, but I abstain from participating in the smaller groups. And the one of the conveners, Ed Whitfield, who is on the board of the New Economy Coalition, and actually is one of the reasons why I attend, because I see he's in one of the YouTube Google Hangout sessions on the New Economy Coalition channel. So from seeing that along with other New Economy content, and additionally I'm encouraged to attend this. So I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm there. So due respect. But that being said, I have challenge because I know a lot about what the problem is. I have my own ideas for solution, but I'm interested in seeing where other people are, because I know a lot of other people are younger. It's a new generation. So I've been in the game for about 20 years or so. So I've seen a lot, and I've seen like the message kind of come and go, and activism kind of come and go. So I'm less inclined towards getting enveloped and hyped on the new session, and just going through the same cycle again. So I stay back a little bit and just see where people are and where people's mindsets are. So we convene back again, and people start talking about the solutions. And so, in the aggregate of the solutions that are provided, I abstain from hearing anyone say anything or even mention the word of nationalism or sovereignty. There's a lot of talk about money. There's talk about education and politics and things like that, which are all very appropriate and very needed. But part of the concern is how limited each of those components is in the long run, and that in having a sustained change, a transformational change, an enduring change, it requires self-determination, and it requires having certain autonomy from the system, from the constructs that are intrinsically antagonistic towards that experience. And so it's on the level of sovereignty and nationalism. And so I know it's very challenging for some people, this and the other, but that's where I'm at, and that's where my camp is at. So and I also know that me just sharing that is going to be somewhat challenging for people. So I try to be constructive and see where to introduce that idea. So I say all that because after the event, I talk with Ed Whitfield actually, and we have a nice conversation, and I share that with him. And so there's recognition of that. Then afterwards, I'm walking in through the lobby out of the building, and there's some young people there, early 20s or so, a young woman and a young man. And so the two asked me, "So what'd you think?" And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And so I say, "Sure, I appreciate it, but here's some additional thoughts." And I dropped the N word, nationalism, and immediately there's like tensing up, and the young woman responds, "But did you see what they did to him?" And talking, I guess, about the cat in Dallas. I'm uncertain. I stay away from the news, so I only get bits and pieces. But apparently, one of the guys who killed the cops, which I disagree with. I mean, I disagree with killing anybody.
Yeah.
But apparently, one of those guys was killed as well. And I guess what she's referring to is apparently it was like an overkill type of situation. I'm uncertain, but she was just very emphatic and a little bit of a little hypeness about it as well. But just did you see what happened? And so immediately it was that fear reaction of look what they're going to do to us if we stand up or whatever else. And my immediate reaction to her is that it's a completely different action. Like his killing cops is different than what I'm referring to as nationalism is. And I recognize that people may perceive it as antagonistic, but it's a matter of just doing what is right and what's appropriate, and that's arguable. We can talk about that or whatever, but what I'm addressing in bringing this to the context of Your Majesty is that I can see the fear and the intimidation that exists within her eyes and within his eyes as well, because he says, well, we need money and we need to do this and the other, and and that's like the intrinsic fear of recognizing that the legitimacy of existing beyond the system and beyond the precepts and the presumptions of convention, and the value and the legitimacy that exists within that, and the fear that exists in standing against that. And so it was just there was a strong resistance just even to the idea or the discussion of sovereignty or nationalism or anything like that, as if it was like too high a goal to attain or something like that. And that is when I wanted to say, you are majesties, you are a queen, you are a king, you deserve nothing less. And again, it's not egotistical, it's not ego stroking, it's not imperialism, it's not dominance. It's just a matter of recognizing that each person, regardless of what the circumstances are, each person is a majesty, and each person lives in a sovereignty, in one's own sovereignty of what that surrounds us. As Lao Tzu teaches, there in the Tao Te Ching, that each of us, regardless of our position in life, exists as a sovereign around us, and that might be difficult for many people to readily recognize. But the universe responds to our actions, and that's a whole other philosophical conversation. But my point is that we are each sovereigns, we are each deserving, we are each spiritual beings blessed with divine presence. We each have value, we each have intrinsic worth, and we deserve a very, very basic experience of well-being, of respect, of compassion, and anything less than that is unacceptable. And it's regardless of how difficult it is to stand up against those who don't treat us with the due respect and compassion Um, it's just that's part of life, and we have to stand up against it. I mean, that's part of the challenge and purpose of life. And the Buddha teaches that we're all experiencing suffering, and so we each are suffering, and even those who are inflicting transgressions and atrocities against us, and all the nasty shit that exists, are also suffering as well. And so, again, that's another thing is overcoming the hatred and the hostility with love, rather than reactionary hatred and hostility. So. It's recognizing that even the oppressor, the man, the system, Babylon, are all suffering as well. And it's a matter of recognizing what the nature of that suffering is and working towards that to effectuate harmonious conditions. So that might seem a little idealistic and kumbaya, but I think that's the type of mentality that we need to build from towards experiencing that and actualizing that. And so that's part of the consideration I mentioned with changing the conversation from that experience of oppression and victimization and powerlessness to recognizing the power that it does exist within ourselves and the resources and the talents and the gifts that we bring to the table. So you asked about we were talking about this at the station, and you asked like what those tangibilities is,
right?
Like breaking it down into like specifics and tangible. So the fact that I have this computer indicates that I have a certain access to resources. I live on welfare. That's I throughout my life I never make more than $20,000 a year. That's the cap of what I make. And I just say that as in terms of saying that I live a certain life of modesty.
Right.
But within that modesty, I am extremely resourceful, and I have a certain efficacy in getting what I need to survive one way or another. Often less favorable means than others, but it happens. So and the thing is, there are cultures like that. You can go to the hood and you can look at all that doesn't exist. You can look at the public housing and everything, all the absences, all the material or perceived material in poverty. And it's challenging and it's difficult. We talk about Flint during the conference, and we talk about Pablo from Detroit, who was rapping about the experience in Flint. So that there's bad stuff going on there. But there's also a wealth, and there's also there's richness and their talent. So some tangible examples: physical fitness, family relationships, even friendships, just relationships in general. There are strong ties, there are strong bonds. Amidst the duplicity and the egotism and the selfishness as well, there's a certain trust though, and there's a culture of solidarity, and there's a consideration of how to translate that into political solidarity and sustained solidarity that goes from generation to generation, rather than just people parlaying that into opportunities to assimilate within conventional society. So that's one thing. Actually, I'm going to go even further than that. I'll go to Africa. When I go to Southern Africa, we travel, my friends and I, we go on a road trip through Southern Africa. And people talk about, oh, there's so much poverty. Are you sure you want to go? It's so dangerous. And we're going. So we do that. And we get into Botswana. And the message that we receive up to that point is that, oh, the rural Southern Africa is so impoverished, there's so little belongings. We're coming from the settler society here on Turtle Island, where people have 2-3 cars per family, per household, and whereas in Botswana, Namibia, and other places in Africa, it may be one car per 100 people or so. So there's that perception of poverty. However, when we get to Botswana, we are informed of the culture and the protocol that when you see somebody walking along the highway, you are obligated to stop and pick that person up and take that person to the next town. And just because that's the culture, it's a culture of cooperation. And so and actually we do that. We do pick up people and take people to the next port. So even though there's a poverty of materiality, there's a wealth of relationship. There's a wealth of cooperation and culture there. Compared to when I return back here, I consider people walking on the highway, it's actually against the law, because we're so afraid of what we're going to do to each other that it's illegal to even walk along the highway, let alone pick somebody up. And so even though there's this wealth of material experience, there are all these cars for every one household, there is a poverty of relationship, there's a poverty of trust, there's a poverty of cooperation. Everything has to be reduced to contracts. and guarantees and insurance and institutional constructs that are historically conducted services that are historically conducted by families, by communities, by villages, cooperatively, just because that's what we do for each other. So there, when we talk about impoverished communities, there is that wealth. Now that's intangible. That might be a little bit kumbaya and idealistic for some people, but it's actually a very strong characteristic and a strong experience from which to build. That being said, there's labor, there's knowledge. There are people who are allies, quote unquote, comrades, supporters who have knowledge, and it only takes one individual who has knowledge to teach others. So we have the propensity to broaden our knowledge. We have access to the internet. We have access to information. We have access to know-how of systems and institutions to do what we need to do. So the knowledge and the information is available. It's simply a matter of applying it. Where the road, and this is me doing a lot of time.
You're good. Yeah.
I didn't. One of the things about where the rubber meets the road is land, and when talking about community, it's very necessary to talk about land and physicality and where people are living, where people are eating and sleeping, and where the food is grown and things like that. That's where kind of like the point of contention comes in, because we are on the land one way or another, wherever we're located, whether it's in the hood, whether it's in the suburbs, whether it's in jail, we're in land somewhere. And so it's a matter of just making the conditions increasingly favorable for ourselves. And so I talk with some friends about squatting, about building solidarity within neighborhoods and building blocks of cooperation whereby the communities claim that land and the buildings and the domiciles as part of that community, refusing to pay mortgage, refusing to pay rent, just saying, hey, guess what? We got this now, and this is us. That's a radical step. A lot of people are uncomfortable with that, but that we have that opportunity. That power exists within us. Yes, we can anticipate consequences accordingly and some reaction, and that's where the young sister at the after the reparations thing said, but they're shooting people. But you know what? It's been like that for centuries. So what's new? The only thing that changes is us standing up and taking a stand. And that's why I was mentioning that it's a different thing between standing up and refusing to pay rent and killing a cop. People like the general public and the international community can get behind establishing an oppressed people and an oppressed community, standing up and saying, we're not taking anymore, we're going to assert ourselves and claim this land as ours. I also mentioned that it's appropriate to work with the native people, get approval, and make arrangements accordingly, and with due respect for that. But standing up and saying, this is our community, we're standing up, we're going to be peaceful, we're going to be loving and cooperative, loving, but we're going to refuse and resist acquiescing to the established claims of convention and oppression. So it's a completely different action than going out and killing cops or going out and killing anybody. It is an action that the international community can get behind compared to assassinating anyone else or anything else like that, because that doesn't resonate with the international community as much as the international community recognizes and supports the cause. The violent action is not doing any better. It's a matter of being increasingly righteous. So there are ways of resisting. I mean, we talk about Gandhi. Gandhi's efforts was a land claim. He said, "Guess what? You guys got to leave. We got this ourselves." That was radical. And everybody likes to talk about Gandhi, but when actually applying Gandhi's principles here, that means the society here looks very different than what it does today, and that means our actions as activists and as quote unquote revolutionaries, or however we define ourselves, means different than today. It means actually challenging the system. It means going beyond just getting a permit to protest and getting permission from the government to stand up against the government. I mean, that's just it's kind of silly to me. But I don't want to be hating or anything. I mean, that's not my point. I mean, each person, each group, more power to everybody. But it's just a matter of I'm 40 years old, and I've been on the front lines. I've been in the protests. I've been arrested, and I've been arrested when nobody else has been around, and nobody else says, "Hey, let's rally and get this cat out of jail." I've been locked up, and people are just like, "Who's that?" So I've been there and done that, and I recognize a certain efficacy, but I also recognize the limitations, and I also recognize how it's just part of the system itself as well. So it's a matter of even resisting and going beyond that and pushing the envelope further. So those are some thoughts.
Yeah.
I go on and on. So
no, it's beautiful.
I'm interested in hearing what you thought.
Well, I guess I'll try to bring two threads together. One is, as you talk about nationalism, what I hear in that is autonomous, like communities getting autonomy for themselves and
Sure.
like self-determination.
Yeah.
And I admire. I don't know a ton about it, but I admire the model coming out of Operation Jackson.
Okay.
And I know that Kali, who was on the closing panel, talked about he likes to think about the worst case scenario.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I appreciate that because it's grounding to actually think about that. And so it seems to me like their effort, which is, they have sort of a three-pronged attack of let's elect people that are who deeply share our politics into public office. Let's gain control of land and enterprises so that we can operate our own economy through cooperative black-owned enterprises in this case, in a majority black community. And then, I'm forgetting the third. I apologize, but do you know?
Was it cooperative economics or businesses, or did you already mention that?
Yeah, maybe I'm conflating two of those pieces.
Because I think there was the politics, there was the.
Yeah. But so it seems to me that their approach is sort of worst case scenario is like if the state collapses, or maybe best case scenario too is like we can be completely autonomous. We will be practicing self-governance and build an economy where we can support ourselves and meet our own needs without any outside inputs. And I think that's necessary to go after it. But also in the short term, he mentioned we live within a police state where the right controls so many forces to take land back or to take enterprises back or take power back out of our hands through violent force. That we need to, I shouldn't say we, but those folks are also operating within the system as it currently exists, and so trying to elect politicians so that they have some legitimacy in the eyes of the corporate state to hold on to the things that they're taking control of. Because the other thing, I don't know a ton about the landless workers movement in Brazil, but I think that's another cool model to look at. And the Zapatistas also, but they used violence at one point to gain their autonomy, and so so that's one thing that I'm thinking about. The other thing is my friend Timothy and I were chatting last night, and he's really grounded in the realities of climate change, and has been working for trying to shift the energy system and get our utilities within community cooperative control. And he sees that we basically have like a few months, if a year, at the current state of the market before the solar economy gets taken over by large corporations. And so he sees a short window where we can insert a bunch of solar co-ops so that the wealth that is created by solar can be distributed to our communities. And he also sees just the deadline of climate change is happening rapidly, and so what he said to me is he was like, I really appreciate the radical thinking of like let's kind of step out of the traditional system and forget even finance if we can, let's not even talk about the dollar. But he said unless we are rapidly building the kind of solidarity you were talking about, where people give each other rides and give each other homes.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless we rapidly do that, a lot of people are going to hurt in the transition. If we don't use the current financial system, the current electoral system, or whatever, to make changes, if we choose to step out of that, his opinion is he doesn't think that the change is going to happen rapidly enough to prevent the kind of mass destruction that. And so I don't know. I mean, I think that both are possibilities, like both pathways. But I appreciated what Kali was saying. It's almost like a two-part approach. Like, let's see the worst-case scenario and account for that, but also always be looking towards the ideal of we want to be completely autonomous. And anyways, also I just want to notice that I want to ground myself. I'm thinking about what my own community in Minneapolis, my people in Cleveland, and like I don't. I think particularly as a white person with class privilege, I don't often place myself in that dream of like an autonomous community.
Well, there's less of an immediate urgency for it.
Yeah.
But that's appropriate to address as well, because when I talk about sovereignty, I mean we frame this in the conversation of black nationalism, quote unquote. I'm actually talking about anybody, any community, any ethnic group. And to be honest, I myself, I'm of African descent. I'm mixed, so I'm of multiple ethnicities: European, African, Seminole, Israeli, and additionally. So, and I come from an experience of the, which is substantially the black experience. I attend an HBCU, and so much of my politics is framed as a young person, as a young man, within that context. But I'm very much a pluralist, intrinsically, to the point of having my credibility as a person of a black person, quote unquote, being somewhat questioned. And so I advocate, and actually I'm involved in a pluralistic kind of nationalism, rainbow nationalism even, because that's just where my home base is. And so this notion of sovereignty is applicable to every community, regardless of ethnicity or religion or whatever else. And part of the notion is becoming increasingly autonomous and independent from the behemoth plutocratic system, where people's where the policies that govern communities is made by remote elitist groups that have less of an interest in the well-being of people in each of these locations. So it's simply a matter of being increasingly establishing smaller, basically like city-states even, or even sovereign villages and sovereign neighborhoods where the neighborhood is self-determining and establishes the policy that governs itself. But you were talking about the situation with the environment and the cooperation that's needed. So that reminds me that I talk also about the need for some type of solidarity, and other than just like verbal solidarity or showing up at a rally and throwing one's right fist in the air kind of solidarity, but like a compact or a contract, like a constitution or a new constitution, where there is a stated set of principles and common experience and common objectives that are shared within the aggregate of that collective, so that rather than just being a reactionary to a shared experience of oppression, which is often one of the most strongest bonds that is experienced within humanity, probably close to second to familial bonds. When a community experience is shared, has a shared experience of oppression, it brings the community together. So that's actually one of the benefits. However, the paradox is that when the oppression begins to be alleviated or even individually alleviated, then that foundation of bond and solidarity is unfounded, and it's necessary to find another pretense or another conduit for that solidarity. And so it's beneficial for this collective environmentalist, social justice, Black Lives Matter, and all the different activist fronts to find a compact that addresses all the interests, all the intentions, all the priorities of these groups, and says we're going to cooperate together, and here's our foundation, here's our compact that we all sign on to, and that we all pledge to cooperate within, and utilizing that as a foundation, as a political construct, to facilitate economic cooperation, to facilitate even resistance to the backlash from convention and established constructs that perceive such as a threat or challenging. So you were talking about something else that I wanted to build upon, about the need for change. Well, I can provide that. I'm involved in such a compact that lists a number of principles referred to as wealth ethos. Um, that is utilized as a premise for establishing political cooperation, but also economic cooperation, and particularly kind of like a treaty between the signees of the compact and the rest of the international community, particularly through the auspices of the United Nations. Um, that's a little bit of a side note, but I think it takes that type of political agreement for there to be a sufficient amount of trust to exist within amongst the different collectives that do have very different life experiences, different historic experiences that have shared interest and kind of like a shared angst against the system, but often for different reasons. So I think there was a lot of solidarity at the conference actually, and a lot of the people who talk about Black Lives Matter also talk about the environment, and additionally, so I think there's a lot of symbiosis and congruence in that conference. I think it's less indicative of the aggregate of the different camps that people are coming from.
Right.
So in terms of like bringing those the aggregate of those elements and people together, I think it's a matter of having a document. I mean, the Earth Charter is something to that effect. I think it does a fair job, but I think we might need something a little bit simpler, a lot shorter, that's easier to convey to the masses. That can be like one page of saying, here's where we are, this is what we believe in, this is what we agree to do, and how we agree to cooperate. And it's easily translatable into the different languages, Espanol, but also Arabic and Chinese, and all the other languages of the world, for the most part. The language Wolof was mentioned at one of the plenaries, so I appreciate that. But it's easily translatable, and so that anybody, a sixth grader, can understand it and readily say, "Yeah, I'm on board. Let's go."
Right.
It needs to have that type of simplicity. I think there's a lot of over intellectualization in these conversations. It's a matter of breaking it down to simple terms that resonate within people all around, and that are readily recognizable, but also are accurate and address what needs to be said and included. So that in the reparations workshop, we were solicited to give 3 to 5 solutions. So that was my first solution was solidarity in the form of a compact that states that, including again I was coming from the nationalist front, but including all the interests of everybody at the table and bringing everybody at the table. And so I think that's essential. And then it's a matter of building from there. When you talk about the solar industry, we don't have to worry about that. We'll just go on the battery. Thanks. So when you talk about the solar industry, so when you talk about like the solar energy or the solar industry getting dominated by corporate interests, I recognize that I can fathom that. However, but I also that's kind of like the point I'm making about the power that exists within ourselves and the self-sufficiency that we have. Because at this point, how to make a solar panel, I'm sure it can be very much common knowledge. I mean, I think it's readily accessible. On the information is there. We know how to make it. Then there's a question of getting the resources to do that. And even then, I think it's doable. Then it's a matter of doing the manufacturing. And that might be increasingly difficult, but all it takes is finding one company, one factory that knows how to do it and is willing to share that information and say, yeah, we're on board, let's go. And I'm sure there are many environmentalist inclined solar energy companies that say, yeah, we knew it. So it's just a matter of supporting that and building that. So even there, we have the resources, we have the ability to do it. It's just a matter of having the political will, the social will, even the spiritual will and the economic will to say, you know what, we're gonna cross our divides, we're gonna cross our boundaries and cooperate with these different fronts and recognize that we each have something to bring to the table. So that's one of those examples of the power that exists within us already. It's just a matter of supporting that. I was talking with a friend about getting this computer. You mentioned the duct tape covering the name brand, but I mean I revert to the system, to Babylon and to the man in getting this computer, which there are considerable resources spent for that. So to call myself out, I probably, now that I think about it, I probably could have done some research and looked for like a small time outfit that maybe I doubt there would be fair trade, but maybe a
Right.
fair trade outfit or something like that.
Right.
But some type of conscientious outfit that like make homemade computers or homemade laptops that may have less of a reputation or credibility or whatever else, but is down for the cause and share even just a fraction of those resources that I expend towards getting one of those computers and say I'm down with you. Let's roll. Let's cooperate and build together. So that's another example of the resources that we already have at our disposal. It's just a matter of becoming increasingly intentional and effective with that. So yeah. So all right.
Yeah.
So along those lines, also I'm involved in a co-op in the Cuyahoga area. We're getting that off the ground, which is fair trade, vegan, organic.
Oh, that's right.
So again, it's a matter of like the grocery stores are our front lines of the activism, and so it's a matter of sustaining ourselves in the same manner that we communicate our idealism, or in other words, building congruence between our idealism and our pragmatism. Utilizing the ideology that we proclaim with our words into the actions of our consumption behavior, in the way that we sustain ourselves, in the way that we nourish ourselves, and getting connection accordingly. So, connecting with the people, the suppliers, the growers of our sustenance.
Yeah.
So,
there was one of the workshops I went to was about the Renaissance Community Cooperative in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Just a striking thing they said was that as they were doing research, basically a grocery store left their neighborhood, and so it took like 10 years to organize, but are opening a cooperative in September. And in their market research, in this very low-income neighborhood, they spend $1.3 million on groceries a week, regardless of like what the store is. That's how much people are spending on food.
Wow.
And so even if they just captured 4% of that market share, they'd be bringing in $65,000 a week and could make a sustainable business. So that's just, it was an empowering thing to hear.
Exactly.
Like we have a lot of resources.
We're already doing it. We have, there's so much, even in a conventional sense, there's so much that exists within our coffers and within our storehouses. It's just a matter of awakening to that and utilizing an increasingly intentional, organized manner. So yeah, and the other thing is with that, like if we work on fair trade, I mean, we talk about all these co-ops. I go to one of the sessions about the co-ops in Italia, and so there's the consideration of connecting directly from our villages, our hoods here, and throughout the earth with the places where people are manufacturing and producing it, growing it, and starting that direct trade, village to village, that becomes increasingly autonomous and independent from the aggregate market forces, so that rather than relying upon market prices and things like that, we're dealing directly with the village. So we're supporting the village, we're supporting the people who are providing us with sustenance, and we're supporting the people, the well-being of those individuals, and those individuals are supporting us, so that whenever we do experience hardship or whatever, we're able to cooperate and sustain ourselves collectively through our networks of these established economic exchanges. And so it's like it's an international, it's a culture of international solidarity, and it's other than a new system or a new convention necessarily. It's just villages cooperating with villages across the globe, and it's already being done in many ways already. It's just a matter of becoming increasingly effective and efficient with that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What? Thinking about like deep solidarity, and I'm thinking. So one of my friends lives in a house where they share all of their income. They have at least at one point they had 2 bedrooms that they offered free to people in need of housing.
Yeah.
But I know that like people have cycled in and out of that house because it takes a lot of energy, emotional energy, to stay committed in that kind of cooperative house.
Yeah.
And I know that the majority of, like, I've even been in situations where a relative stranger mentions that they need housing.
Yeah.
And I feel some amount of distrust, and then I feel like, oh, I really don't want to put that burden on my housemates. So like I feel safe for myself, but I don't know what kind of situation I'll be putting them in.
Yeah.
So I'm just noticing, like, I have that deep distrust too of strangers, and I'm curious if you have thoughts about what does it take for us to like hasten how we build solidarity, because it takes a long time.
Well, the circumstances that you described are actually rather increasingly intimate. When you're talking about letting a stranger stay within the place where you rest and sleep,
Right.
that involves a significant amount of trust. So that's like a higher tier, this higher tier level of trust. Whereas when you talk about like economic or like trade and buying groceries and things like that, and putting like a couple $100 into a co-op kitty or something like that for the purposes of purchasing a bulk amount for the entire group, that requires that's a lower level of trust. So there are degrees of that. So when you talk about like the residential situation, I readily agree with that. That's difficult, and I've been in that situation myself, where people on the street just stop me and say, "Hey man, what's up? I need a place to stay," and I've given people a place to stay, and I've actually been threatened with eviction for doing so. So I've been through that, so I've done it, but it's also it's not for everybody, and it shouldn't that's like from going from 0 to 100 real quick or something.
Sure.
I don't know what the hip hop. I know there's a hip hop phrase or something like. Anyway,
oh, that's you got it.
Yeah. Anyway, so I mean that's going a little bit too fast, too quick, often for many people. So it's a matter of building as each person is comfortable and gradual. So and sharing what's available. If we're in a situation where we don't have a lot of space, or we're not in a secure environment or whatever, then it may be less a matter of getting some place to stay, but doing something else. So that's consideration levels. One of the lessons that I learned from my experience in putting people up from the streets, I mean, it got to the point where the cats that I was putting up were referring my place to other cats, and like just additional cats were coming through, and I'm like, yo, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I was like, Peter, you're supposed to be this righteous dude and everything else. You're supposed to make it available, and so I felt that responsibility. But simultaneously, it was getting a little bit hectic. So, and I had to start thinking about. I mean, I was living by myself. I still am, but I had to start thinking about like my neighbors and everything, because I was giving people access to the building, and I have a responsibility of accounting for anybody who's coming that I let in,
right,
or who I let in, who let somebody else in. I mean, that's still my responsibility as well. So it's appropriate to be mindful of that and have due caution at that higher level.
Yeah.
So that's one consideration.
That's a good point.
One of the things I learned though is that when in terms of like community building and village building, in this endeavor that I'm involved with called UNI Village, one of the things that one of the intentions that we arrive at is establishing a hostel, so that. I mean, establishing residential accommodations for families, like apartment building, but then also having like a hostel for visitors, and then for people who need a place to stay, a place to crash. That's distinct from the family's residences and domiciles, but it also is providing, satisfying the needs that people have in having a place to crash and everything else. So it's appropriate to address those needs as we're able to. But it's also appropriate for us to maintain our levels of comfort as we stretch out and avail ourselves increasingly towards that trust and towards that cooperation.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what are some concrete things that I can push myself on in taking more risks for solidarity that are also working towards systemic change.
Yeah.
Because I think about people have squatted in houses in Minneapolis. You know, right after Occupy Homes took off for a while, and they were talking about trying to take over houses, and it was both like a political like let's take direct action to make some moves and push for policy changes, but also just in the short term, like let's give people houses who don't have homes.
Yeah.
And I wonder what's the best leverage point of making some bigger
like
change.
I mentioned, that the occupying the houses, the squatting, that's a big move, and it requires some thorough planning and also thorough solidarity and support, because it's easy for convention to shut it down and just come in with the sheriffs and forcefully remove people. So in order to withstand that and endure it, it means having a plan in place that sustains itself beyond that reaction. And that's where like the solidarity, the international solidarity comes in, and as well, and planning accordingly. Having safe houses and having the mechanics established to respond to that reaction. But in terms of like identifying opportunities for extending oneself, I think it's a matter of just like recognizing what our needs are, and how do we satisfy those needs, and how can we satisfy those needs in an increasingly cooperative manner, in a manner that is increasingly harmonious with our ideals. And so I mentioned like the grocery store as being the front lines because I know that's where I go on a weekly basis to satisfy my needs of just nourishment. So the consideration is how can I do that in an increasingly harmonious manner that is consonant with my politics and my idealism. So that's one consideration. Then another consideration is okay, where am I living? What is the environmental harmony of my domicile in terms of the energy consumption? Am I using gas? How much electricity am I using? Am I doing am I utilizing renewable energy? How can I if I'm living in an apartment, how can the apartment transition from coal to renewable energy, or even being off the grid? What can I do to do that? And that's a little bit of a longer term consideration, but I mean, it's just like I said, it's just a matter of recognizing where our needs are, and also a matter of making our lifestyles increasingly modest, and kind of withdrawing from that consumption culture, and all the self-worth and self-esteem and self-value that's attached to trinkets and doodads, and instead just to be purposeful and to be modest and recognize, okay, what do I genuinely need to sustain myself and to continue on, and then like I say, with this computer, is there another option? Is there a group that's doing this, that's down for the cause and involved in things like that, that's using or that's paying. I know there's material that goes into the mechanics of this, that comes from Africa, and I'm generally aware of there being adverse conditions for the people who do the actual extraction of the material.
Right.
So I think that's something that's lesser known amongst people. But so is there an outfit that's using renewable sources, renewable materials, or has better relationships with the people that are providing the materials that go into the computer? Internet provider, utilities. I mean, everything that we use to sustain ourselves. Is there an opportunity that we can do this in an increasingly harmonious manner, or is there a smaller outfit that might be conventional and selfish at the moment, but because it's a startup or something like that, might it be amenable to like signing on to a compact that we establish and saying, hey, if you sign with us and agree to incorporate these principles within your corporation, we're going to give you this block of solidarity to support you and help you as well.
Right.
So those are other options as well. So those are just opportunities, and that involves research, that involves finding the information and finding the groups, but and that takes effort and time and concentration, but that's part of the process as well.
Yeah. So,
I'm a little bit winding down.
Cool.
I've been talking for a while, so we've been going at this for a while. But so anything else you want to share?
No, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Jason's like, yeah, man, it's about time. All right, so that's about it. Love and peace. So are the people on the bus. All right.